Welcome to the first episode of my Blender Experiments series. Now what's this all about? I'm going to show you some experiments I've made and then explain you very brief how I made them. Don't expect anything detailed like my tutorials. It's just about the ideas. I want to give you some inspiration of what is possible with Blender. And not everything looks as shiny as the stuff I normally upload to YouTube. But like I said, it's just about the ideas. And the first thing I want to show you is really awesome. It's another disintegration with the explode modifier. Now look at this. Isn't that cool? Like I said, I made it with the explode modifier and a particle system, of course. And that particle system isn't rendered because we have the explode modifier, so only the emitter is rendered. And the cool thing about it is that the particles spawn from the left to the right. This is because this object has a texture which is mapped to the particle attribute time. And this texture is nothing else than a blend texture. This is why the particles spawn from the left to the right. And the other cool thing about it is the turbulence. I have that wind field here. But it doesn't have any noise. The whole turbulence comes from the texture field here. And this texture field has a texture which is a very smooth cloud texture because its noise depth is 0. And this is an awesome way to make turbulence. Look at this. Isn't that cool? This was already the first experiment I want to show you. Let's go to the second one. In the second experiment, I tried to make a flamethrower which can really ignite stuff for a short period of time. The visualization isn't really good yet, but the idea has some kind of potential. So it's all about this particle systems again. That particle emitter has 5 different parts. So first of all, I hide all the parts except for the first one so that we can have a better look at it. The first part is just the ordinary flamethrower. Has some huge normal speed and some Brownian motion. And that cube has collision activated. So the particles can collide with that cube and they die on hit. So as soon as they reach the cube, they disappear. Let's go to the second particle system. That particle system is really not rendered. Normally the visualization is none. This particle system is a reactor particle system to the first particle system. And it reacts on the collisions of the first particle system, and it emits particles from the collided particles of the first particle system. Okay. It has some huge random speed and a huge damping factor. So as soon as a particle from the first system collides, it emits some particles which spread into all directions because of the random speed, but they soon stop because of the huge damping factor and keep their locations. The random value for the lifetime is 1, so over the whole period of lifetime, which is 75, particles are dying, and this is important for the third part of the particle emitter. These are the ignition flames. This is also a reactor particle system, but it reacts on deaths of the second particle system. That ignition flames have some random speed, some Brownian motion, and some acceleration into Z direction. Okay, and that's already all the magic. The fourth part and the fifth part is comparable to the first and the third part. It's just The same with a lower particle amount and with lamps. Okay, let's go to the third experiment. I tried to make some fake volumetric smoke, which looks like this. As you maybe know, procedural textures, that means generated textures with Blender, can be mapped to real three-dimensional texture coordinates. And I made use of that. I have that smoke emitter here. It emits billboards. Billboards are just planes which always face into camera direction. And that planes have a texture which looks like a halo. It's a blend texture type, and this is mapped to alpha with multiply, so that billboards fades on their edges. And they also have a texture, a smoke texture, which is really mapped with three-dimensional global texture coordinates. And it's also mapped to alpha with multiply. The other two textures aren't important yet. Shed buff is disabled because it looks strange when that billboards cast shadows when they're facing the camera, but the lights comes from the side. So I have that second particle emitter here. It's also a billboard particle emitter, but they are facing the lamp object and they are casting shadows. It is in a different layer, which isn't rendered, but it still casts shadows. And the ground has traceable shadows activated because of that set transparency shadows, you know. Okay, let's have a look at that smoke texture. It is made with texture nodes. I decided to choose a distorted noise texture because it looks like smoke. And because there's a lot of black in the texture, I combined 3 different distorted noise textures with different noise generating settings so that I have more white in it. I scaled and translated the texture 3 times. Translating means moving, just so that I have some diversity. I have 4 textures now, 1, 2, 3, 4, which are slightly different. And that 4 textures, they get translated into that direction. That blue input of the compose RGB node can also be used as the Z vector, and this is defined by a time input. So they are slowly rising. That textures are slowly rising upwards. The speed with which they are rising are defined by that multiply value here. And all 4 textures are rising with different speed, and that 4 rising textures are multiplied with each other with different factors. That's all to get some diversity, to get some changes while they are rising. And the last texture does even translate the whole thing again to get some additional distortion. That color ramp is only there to make the black values to have a 0 alpha value. Okay, and that's it for the third experiment. Actually, I wanted to show you a fourth experiment, but I have already spent too much time, so I take the time left to remind you that I also have a DeviantArt account. There isn't much to see yet, but it's becoming more slowly. Not everything is made with Blender, but the most of it. If you're interested, there's a link in my channel description. So, I think I could make a second episode of my experiments very soon, or not, depending on your comments. That's it. See you in the next episode, or the next tutorial, or whatever. Bye!